looking back, you know, when I eventually take my last breath, I've had a pretty good life. I've done things that people would never have even dared to try.
If I could go back in my lifetime and say, what's a big mistake? I wish I figured this out earlier.
Ask questions, ask why.
It takes a special leader to help you grow in a certain role.
Doesn't matter how I speak, doesn't matter how I look.
And it holds true as you think big and don't let anybody stop you.
Now that's a success story. Thanks everybody for joining us on this episode of Success Stories with Steve Cross. Today we have Andrew Dennis, the president and founder of GigaCrete. And before we get into this amazing product and what all he's doing in the space the last few years, I kind of want to, Andrew, I want to start out with, you know, kind of hearing your story and your career, you know, the trajectory of how you started out. I know you were born and grew up in England, but kind of take us from, you know, what led you, maybe decisions, or maybe it just happened on your career path, how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah. I was born in England, but I didn't belong there. And I knew from being a kid, this is not for me. I say England's the world's biggest museum, and it hasn't changed a whole lot.
Really?
So graduated at 15, went straight into art school, graduated my first art school at 18, went into a second college, graduated at 21, and was given a job as a set designer with the BBC. I didn't actually have to go looking for a job. They approached the college, and I did that for a year. And set design is panelized construction. And I tell everyone, I think it's the DNA of most of the things I've done since then. So I did it for a year, and then I got offered a fantastic job in Canada and emigrated 2 weeks later. I remember my father standing at the airport saying, what happened?
Wow.
I didn't give him much warning, and off I was. That was it.
How old were you then?
I was 21.
21. Whew.
So I was an architect and store planner and designer for the Hudson's Bay Company, a big retailer in Canada called The Bay, and got to go to every city pretty much, even towns, all across Canada. And 3 years in Toronto, pretty rough winters. I didn't really like the cold. And then at one point, I almost lost an ear waiting for the GO train in the morning to pick me up. It froze and I bent it and
Really?
It stayed there. And anyway, so okay,
That's
I'm
crazy.
not going to go through another winter.
Yeah.
So I moved
Time
to
to
Vancouver.
leave.
So at this point, I'm in my early 20s, and I decided in Vancouver it's time to work for myself. And I'd done 43 restaurants within the department stores. That was part of my job with Hudson Bay. So I'm in a Chinese restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant, a young guy, just inherited 8 restaurants. He came over and he'd seen me a couple of times. And he said, you know, who are you? What do you do? And I told him, and I said, you could really use a remodel. And he said, yeah, I know. I got 8 restaurants. They were my grandfather's, my father's, now they're mine, and they're all kind of run down. And I said, I have an idea. When you shut down to do a remodel, how long do you close? And he said, about 2 months. I said, so your patrons get used to going somewhere else, and you've got no income for 2 months. So my idea is you give me that 2 months, and I'm going to build your new restaurant interior like a movie set in a warehouse that I'll rent. You can walk into your restaurant, you stay open, and then what's the worst 2 days of the week? And he said, well, Sunday and Monday. I said, okay, what time do you close Saturday night? 8 o'clock. I said, all right. I'm going to come in at 8:01, so if there's any memorabilia on the wall, get it out, because there's going to be a big dumpster outside, and we're going to completely evacuate your entire interior except the kitchen. We're not doing the kitchen. So he said, okay, you're hired. So I designed it, he approved the designs, we built it, and I installed it in 2 days. So
Wow.
I don't think anyone had ever done it before, and everything was wood, and I immediately get all the other projects. So eventually that took me over the border into the US. And my last job in Canada, I meet this guy, a professional photographer from Palos Verdes, LA. And we're both stuck in an airport in Whitehorse, in a whiteout. And I walked over, there's only a few people in the airport. I walked over to him, and he's got these huge Nikon camera cases around his feet. And I said, these are fabulous cameras. You must be a professional photographer. Why are you here? And he said, well, I didn't think it was all going to be white. So I'm going... So he said, what do you do? And I told him, and he said to me, my accounts are BMW, Toyota, Ford, Arco Oil, and some other stuff. And he said, I need a model of a spaceship delivered in Palm Springs in 10 days. Can you do that? And I said, yeah, what's it for? And he said, it's a Ford Futura, new car that's come out, Ford Fairmont Futura. And he showed me a picture of the car, and I said, what does the spaceship look like? And he said, well, we don't have a design yet. So while we're at the airport, I drew 6 different designs.
Wow.
So we get to Vancouver. He faxes it, the sheet, or sheets, I think there's more than one, to J. Walter Thompson Ad Agency in New York. The art director circles one and writes $60,000 under it. And I look at it, and I said, "Are you kidding? This is 1978." And he said, "No, my budget's like $250,000. Why did you ask that?" I said, "Because I would have done it for $6,000. So I felt so guilty. I thought, I'm not going to make a model. I'll make a full-size spaceship. And I did. And I delivered it literally a day early. So during the shoot, first of all, the Futura isn't a particularly attractive car. And the only line I could take from it was the K-pillar, and that became like an aileron. The Ford dealer is there at the end of it, and the models are there, and we were there like half a day. And he said at the end of it, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "Find a dumpster." He said, "Can I have it?" I said, "Yeah, I've got my check. I'm out of here. It's all yours." So I decided then I'm going to emigrate again from Canada to Southern California. The weather's better. If I can make this kind of money and have some fun doing it, I'm not going to keep doing the restaurants, which was hard work. So I moved to LA. I moved to Palos Verdes. That's where he lived. Turns out it's a beautiful place to live. I tell everyone, thank God he didn't live in Compton, because I'd have moved to Compton. So anyway, so I've moved. I had to go through the whole immigration process for a while. And eventually I set up a design company in LA, but I would fly back to Vancouver fairly regularly. And I like the window seat. And you fly, this is a turning point. And flying over Washington and Oregon, you can see where they've stripped the trees. And if you take trees from the side of a mountain, exposing, next time it rains heavy, the dirt's gone, and you're down to bedrock, nothing is ever going to grow there again. And I thought, you know what? I've built over 5 million square feet of projects with wood. I've done some of this damage. I'm not going to use wood anymore. And this was the first inkling of, I'm going to be an environmental architect. I didn't think of that title at the time. And I tell everyone, green was a color back in 1984. It wasn't this movement that we have now. So that combined with, I've been a diver, scuba diver, since I was 16. I actually paid for my college, both colleges, working as a salvage diver every summer for 12 weeks. And I decided I wanted to do the same thing again and build myself a vacation home in the Caribbean. And I set some crazy design rules, and I had a bunch of architectural buddies in LA, and all of them said, "This is impossible." And I reminded them, that's what Jaguar said when I wrote a letter to Jaguar in 1978, and I said, "Has anyone ever turbocharged an XJ6? And they said, "That's impossible." 2 months later, I sent them a photograph of my turbocharged XJ6. And I said, "It's not impossible." I cheated a little bit on the horsepower. I put aviation fuel in it when we did the dyno test. So I got a few more horsepower out of it. So anyway,
That's funny.
I tend to branch off too much. So
No, you're good. You're good. I love these.
So my design rules were make in California where I lived, stuff it in a container. It has to be lightweight, manhandleable, no wood, no drywall. Drywall, you got mold and mildew issues in a damp environment. Flood resistant, fire resistant, hurricane resistant to 200 miles an hour. I'm missing. And built with local unskilled labor in 1 week. That was the big one. And it was 1 week because I've never had a 2-week vacation. So I was going to take a 1-week vacation. I figured, okay, 1 week is really 5 days. I got a day to get there, a day to come back. I got to build it in 5 days. So it can't be too big. But it can be a module that I can then add on another module later, then another, then another. And I can go up vertically, or I can go out horizontally, or it can stack and climb a hill. Mm-hmm. This was the initial thought process.
So basically, you gave yourself these specs that are nearly the opposite of the construction industry at the time.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was following you correctly.
So
yeah.
When you do this, you have to do whatever research you can find. And this is pre-Google days. This is Yahoo, when you typed it in and waited a few minutes. And I had done the drawing, and I wasn't getting anywhere on the research. And then I had put a glass of water under my drawing board in the freezer part of my little fridge, and I forgot about it while I'm drawing. I realized, I'm going to break the glass. I pull it out. I've got 2 glasses of water, identical, both weigh the same, but one's crystallized and gone hard, turned to ice. And I went, oh my God, this is what concrete should do. First of all, Portland cement is the world's biggest CO2 producer by far. It's arguably responsible for between 8 and 12% of all the CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, global warming, that's in the atmosphere. So that was one of the other things I forgot to mention, no Portland cement. The two big ones were actually no wood, no Portland cement. So I thought, okay, I've got to find some other binder or cement that replaces Portland cement if I'm going to use that in the wall system. And seeing this glass full of water and a glass full of ice, I thought, okay, crystallization means the water didn't come out. It didn't shrink, which is a huge issue with concrete. You're adding 18 to 20% by volume of water to the concrete. It activates the hardening process, and it has to come out. That means you're removing 18% of the volume of the concrete. That's the reason it cracks. That's the reason the concrete we walk on cracks, and stucco on a wall cracks, and lots of other things. So I have a new thing now to enter, crystalline cement. So I do this, and I find 5 companies, all non-English speaking, 5 different countries, and I start calling them. And some of them I couldn't get past the receptionist until I realized there's one global word called lab, like laboratory, laboratory. And now I can get into the lab, and there's always someone that speaks English in a lab. So I tell them, look, I'll sign anything. You're making grinding wheels. Someone else is making furnace liners. That means it's tough. That means it's fire resistant. And I won't tell you all the others. And I said, can I come and see you? And I said to my 2 kids, I was a divorced single father. I said to my 2 kids, sorry, but you're going to have to stay with your mom for a few weeks during the summer. And I literally flew around the world for the first time ever. And I came back with what I call my 5 jigsaw puzzle pieces. They were the missing pieces from the picture that I'd already developed.
Really?
The garage then turned into a lab. The cars got moved outside. And for about 17 months, I worked on multiple experiments and realized I could take waste, like not trash, but the first one actually was rice husks. And I see this guy he's being told off on the news. He's being fined 400 grand a year for burning rice husks in California. He's a big grower in Sacramento. I call him up. I said, can I have some? I think I could use this. And he said, are you kidding me? I'll pay you to take it. And I thought, okay, I've just reduced my material cost. And how many other materials are there out there like this? There's lots. So I thought, okay, I remember driving from Vancouver down to California multiple times and going by really smelly wood pulp paper factories. Yeah. And they had them in BC as well, north of Vancouver. So I get a hold of them. Can you send me some of the sludge, the paper mill sludge? And it stinks horrible. When you take the bucket lid off, you have to take a deep breath before you do it. So I make some samples with that doesn't smell anymore, doesn't even burn. I can nail it, screw it, run it through a table saw. So that led me to multiple other things, including waste ash. So ash from a coal-fired power station, they make millions of tons of it every year, can't get rid of it. The really good stuff called fly ash, they sell to the cement industry. So I don't want that one, that means I got to buy it. I want the nuisance material that you're stuck with. So I made multiple experiments with that. And then I get an air ticket from Las Vegas in my mailbox. I'd bought a house in the country. I didn't even check. It was a rural location. And I'd left LA. Actually, I should have mentioned that earlier. I got shot at on the freeway, divorced, sold my company and burglarized all in 1 month. And I got the message, time to leave. And I moved to Southern California, or further south, to a place called Hamul, 20 miles in from San Diego. Fabulous place. And that's when I thought, I'll take a 4-year break. I was too young to retire, but I needed a break. And that's really when all this stuff happened. I made all kinds of different experiments, realized I've got something. I accidentally made an IED. I put diesel fuel in it, and as I'm mixing it, it overheated, and it exploded. And I ran as it did it, and all these shards came off and stuck in the walls, and luckily not one of them hit me. All right, so I get an air ticket from Las Vegas. I call them up. I said, who are you? Why did you send me an air ticket? And they said, a friend of yours, a guy named Jerry Brennan, has sent us your resume. I said, look, I'm not looking for a job. I'm busy doing something that's really important and exactly the opposite of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is hardly environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
So I said, look, if my old best friend from LA did it, he obviously forgot to tell me that he did it. I'll come on the interview. Why am I coming? They said, well, we can't tell you on the phone. So I took the flight on Monday. I met the people here and I got hired immediately as part of the team to design New York, New York. Did concept sketches and all kinds of other things. There was a 7-month contract. At the end of it, I'm finished. And the guys said, we've got fresh snow up on Mount Charleston. We're going to go skiing. We know we're never going to see you again. You hate this place so much. And I went with them and I got hit the last run at the end of the day. I got hit by a snowboarder, which had just arrived. This is 93 now. And he broke my knee completely in half sideways. I then hit a tree and I broke it again below the knee. And I ended up, they brought me down in a body bag, wake up in a hospital. 3 operations later, I then get hired while I'm in the hospital bed to design another casino.
So it didn't slow you down at all.
Yeah, and I wanted to go home. I wanted to finish what I'd started. And that was another 2-year and 3-month contract, so almost 3 years have gone by now. That company moved away, and I got offered a really, really good job with the biggest architectural firm in Las Vegas. I became vice president and director of design. We had about 86 architects, I think, overall. Did very well, and that meant I wasn't finishing what I'd started. Now, in the meantime, this environmental movement has begun. It's called LEED, U.S. Green Building Council. And I realized, okay, it's going to catch up with me. I haven't continued on with the experiments and the development, and I need to quit. And in the meantime, while I'm there, I met who is now my wife. And I remember saying to her, are you okay with me having no salary for 2 or 3 years? And she said, yes, you need to finish what you've started. And I knew I had something really important, but I was way too ahead of the game.
Yeah, too early, right?
Yeah. So I quit. I locked myself up in an industrial building in North Las Vegas Motor Speedway. My next door neighbor was Carroll Shelby. I'm a gearhead. He's like the ultimate gearhead.
Yeah.
I got to know him. It was just a fabulous environment. Leave me alone. I think I had 4 people. One's my son, another one was my nephew, and another guy. And I took it as far as I could. And I then eliminated some of this waste material stuff with transportation issues to go get it. Taking slugs from a paper mill, now you've got to let it dry. Well, it's going to dry really quick in Las Vegas, but it's going to stink like hell, so I'm going to have everyone upset with me. So I ended up finding local coal-fired ash, and I made samples in a panel, and that was called GigaCrete. So it looks like concrete, but 2 guys can pick up what appears to be a 700-pound panel, and they can carry it. So it was fairly lightweight. I then developed the coatings to go over it. Plaster Max, like Maximum Plaster, was the interior finish replacing drywall. So that's around 9,000 PSI. Fairly good concrete's 3,000 to 4,000 PSI. So that means it's virtually indestructible. And then...
you don't have any chemistry background or anything,
No.
right? You were art and design, right? That was this was all self-taught experimentation, take your failures, successes, and just keep moving.
Exactly. All right. Our stucco max right now, exterior, we're on recipe 1253. So I think Plastimax we're on 797, I think.
Wow.
So like Thomas Edison, his saying was, I know 1,500 ways not to make a light bulb. I've got him beat on stucco max. So it got better and better and better. One of the things that happened along that way towards the end of that was I didn't have any guns. I had neighbors with guns, and I was developing something that has turned into our product called Ballisticrete. Now, this is a ballistic rated plaster that goes on a wall, and I can stop handguns with relatively thin, and I can stop AK-47 with like 1.5 inches. We've taken that to generation 2 now, which has only been in the last 2 years, where we're around 20,000 PSI. And we've recently stopped a Barrett 50 caliber armor piercing round.
Wow.
In our coating, which has never been done before. So I think we're going to split Ballisticrete off now as a separate company.
Peeled off.
It's got a new life to go through. And anyway, I commercialized everything and got code approvals in 2007. I remember this is where it gets a bit tricky. I remember going to Intertech, and I said I wanted to do a 1-hour fire test. Now, in the meantime, I've developed a steel stud and foam panel, and basically you build with the insulation foam panel first, which is about 6 inches wide, and in the middle of that is where the steel stud drops in. So
And it's just formed with hollow, so you just drop those steel studs right in there.
Right. Now, pre-cut on a CNC hot wire machine means it's dead accurate. Everything's square, everything's in the right place. It's the same every time. It just repeats. So then I got a patent on connecting two steel studs back to back, which forms like an I-beam shape, but two 2x4s, there's a 4x4. So when one panel touches another, you've got a double stud. So it's basically steel stud framing is 24 on center. Wood studs are 16 on center. So every 24 inch, you've either got a 4x4 or a 2x4. So it's 4x4, 2x4, 4x4. So I'm now building with styrofoam instead of a fairly heavy ash-based panel. At the time, I remember my patent attorney saying to me, you know that there's so many parts per million in this ash that's bad. And how many times can you afford to stand in the courtroom defending yourself, even though you've proved that you've encapsulated it because their kid keeps getting sick in the house that you sold them, and you're getting the blame? And I said, this is 2008. The recession had started. We weren't selling hardly anything at all. I just released it into the market. And I said, you're right. I'm going to start again. So I went another year. We kept going with the coatings, and we were selling those to certain industries, not our own homes. And that's when I decided I'll abandon the ash, I'll abandon the concrete-looking panel, and I'll use styrofoam of any thickness. But the studs always got to be buried in it, so I have no thermal bridging anywhere through it on the house. And what I mean by that, like on a stick-built house, a wood-framed house, the drywall's touching on the inside every 16 inches, and the sheathing on the outside touches it the same every 16 inches. So that's a thermal bridge. There's a thing called a thermographic photograph. If you take a photograph of a house, it's like an infrared photograph. You see a dark blue house and orange lines where the studs are. That's where the heat is coming out or the cold is going in. So we have none of that. So that meant this ash panel with our two coatings on it had a very high thermal efficiency and repeatable. It's always going to be the same. So we start at R28. Code calls for 23, but it's really 19 because of all these thermal breaks, thermal bridges. And our roofs start at R52. So that means on the energy scale, which is it's called the Hearst Index, 0 to 150. New homes that meet new code come in at 100. We come in at 2. So what that means is we're downsizing all the mechanical equipment. If someone says you need a 10-ton air conditioner, we probably don't even need a 1-ton.
Wow.
Thermal efficiency works whether it's hot or cold. It's the same thing. It's just like a styrofoam cooler. You know, you can put hot water in it, it stays hot. You can put ice in it, it stays cold. So this is the same thing. So then back to Ballisticrete. So I asked my neighbors, I said, I'm developing something and it's looking pretty good. Can you bring your guns down to the factory? This was on a Saturday, and I realized I've got a ballistic rated finish, can be interior or exterior. And then I found out later, because we're on TV, we're on YouTube and on Channel 7 News, I find out later it's a felony to do this.
Well,
and we didn't know. So we don't do it in the factory anymore.
that's funny.
Maybe we
You
cut.
live and learn. You live and learn.
All right, so we talked about splitting off Ballisticrete. So the company now has developed basically a factory package. So we've got interest now from Kenya and Ghana. It'll be 2 factories in each country. Northern California, Tennessee, Texas, Montana. So, you know, we're now about to explode finally. And it's taken a while. We basically took on the lumber industry, the Portland cement industry, and the drywall industry.
Yeah, you create a lot of enemies real quick, right?
Well, the first quickest one was back to 2007 when we did the drywall test. I went in, I said, I want to do a 1-hour fire rating. And they said, there isn't one. It's 15 minutes. I said, wait a minute. I'm an architect. I've been using Typex 1-hour fire rated drywall for a long time. Are you telling me it fails? He said, yeah, fails in 16 minutes. So they made the test 15 minutes to make sure drywall passed. And I said, that's not right. Everyone thinks they got 1 hour. He said, well, you don't. I said, let's do the test. So we get to 15 minutes. I passed easily. I was watching the computer screen. There's a time temperature curve, and we flatlined at 700 F, not enough to combust. We get to 15. He said, you passed. I said, keep it going. I'll pay you $100 a minute. So we get to 22 minutes, and the hierarchy come down, grab their engineer, take him over in the corner. I can see he's in trouble. And he comes back over, and he said, I may have just lost my job. I said, I'm paying you $100 a minute. And he said, I got to shut it off right now. So thankfully, we have all the records, even the time temperature curve and the timeline.
Good.
So shortly after that, obviously we passed. Shortly after that, I get this big guy, and he said, "Are you Andrew?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You'll be the last to see your wife and your 2 kids buried in the desert. Back off." I said, okay, I backed off. So I won't say any
Real
more.
life, huh? Real
Yeah,
life.
yeah. I'm American now, but at the time I thought, welcome to America.
Yeah, right?
Anyway, we have shipped to 7 countries. We've covered every climatic condition from Alaska to the equator. Things like the desert here. We have cold nights, extremely hot days. We freeze in the winter. And then you have, 115 degree air temperature, 128 surface temperature in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we've passed all of the tests. We've got thousands and thousands of square feet out there, probably in the millions of coatings with no claim. No one's ever come back and said, it cracked or it did this or it did that.
Not one single claim.
No. So then 2018, at the end of the year, Governor Rick Scott from California came out, and he came to Las Vegas to talk to Zappos, Allegiant Airlines, and GigaCrete. And I told him, I said, first of all, I know I'm last, but thank you for at least putting me in the same category as these 2 giant companies, because we're, just coming out of being a startup.
Yeah.
And I said, I understand why you need me there, because we've already shipped about half a dozen homes at the time. I think we've got 11 now in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Bahamas, all of which have been through multiple Category 5s. The one in Exuma on the beach right next to the water has been through a flood, 4 Category 5s, and FEMA went to visit some of these, but especially the one in the Bahamas. And they've actually rewritten the code around us back in August of 22. And I can send you all of this.
Yeah.
And basically their new code says earthquake resistant, hurricane resistant, flood resistant, fire resistant, mold and mildew resistant, and other hazards. So when they called me, it was a lady in DC, she called me and she said, we've been following you for 4 years. We've seen the Woolsey Canyon Malibu Soul Survivor house. And we've seen some of your properties in St. Thomas, St. Martin, and Bahamas. And so I read this thing and I said, you got this off my website. And I said, what's other hazards? And she said, on your website, it says mold and mildew, insect and vermin resistant as well. I said, so you did get it off the website? And she said, we're FEMA, we can't say we did, and we can't say we didn't. And obviously we can't promote your company. All right, so what that means is if you lose your house in any one of those events and you want FEMA to help, you cannot rebuild it with the same material. And that's us. We're the only one that checks all those boxes. Right? So back to Rick Scott. So I said, look, I understand why you would want us to be in Florida. We're shipping through Florida to get to the islands. But it's too humid and you got too many bugs. I kind of like it here now. So I'll stay here, but maybe in the future we'll put a factory in Florida, but I'm not going to move there. And I said, the main reason I didn't want to go to Florida, you have a thing called a Florida Product Code Number, and I have to pay for this. And it's going to cost a bunch, and it's every single component in the house. I have to pay for this. And you're the only state out of all 50. Actually, I said to him, you're a rogue state. And he snapped back, what do you mean a rogue state? And I said, you're the only one out of all 50 that has this. And he said, okay. I remember him going like this. Do you think you'd pass the hurricane testing? I said, yeah, but it takes 18 months. He said, you'll get a call from someone next week. And they left. And I did. On Monday, I get a call from the head of building and safety in Tallahassee. And I said to him, look, I'll cut to the chase. I do want to do it. Who's the best testing agency? He said, Blackwater Testing in Miami. I said, can you make the call? And it's coming from you versus this crazy architect in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And he did. And we did it in 3 months.
Wow.
So we shipped all the raw materials there. You have to make it in front of them. And he called me. So one of our guys, the trainer, he went there basically for the week. And on the first day, he'd made the panel and he'd mixed and applied the coatings on one side, the exterior stucco max. And the guy called me and he said, you're not going to pass the first test. Your coating's too thin. It's only 3/16 thick. And I said, what's the first test? He said, it's called the missile impact test. Do you know what it is? I said, yes. It's a flying 2x4 shot out of an air cannon. And he said, Andrew, that will go through a cement block wall and kill you on the other side. I said, okay. He said, there's a light body or a heavy. I said, I want to do the heavy body, not the light. He said, no way you're going to pass. We bounced off 12 times. So I said to him, did it crack? He said, yep, it cracked. I said, did it fall off? He said, no, you just got a little crack, 2x4s that big. I said, did it crack on the backside, on the plaster max? He said, no, not at all. I said, okay, next time we do this, when we do it again in the future, can I stand behind the wall when you do it? And he said, why do you want to do that? I said, because I want to step out and say I stand behind my product. And there was silence for a moment. And he said, check with your insurance company.
Yeah, right. Make sure your life insurance is paid
Yeah,
up.
they didn't do it. He did too with their insurance, and they said, no way.
Yeah,
So
I
at
bet.
some point, I'm going to do it. So at the end of all these tests, we ended up being the only 245 mile an hour sustained wind speed, not gust, full-on sustained wind speed building system in America that's also fire resistant, flood resistant, earthquake resistant, insect and vermin resistant. This is why FEMA's been following us and eventually have rewritten the code.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But as you mentioned earlier, we've taken on the lumber industry, the cement industry, and the drywall industry. So on the coating side, we got blocked with distribution. Anyone that carried the giants of the industry, they've had lots of lawsuits where moisture's got through it, grew mold inside the wall, got banned in a couple of states. It doesn't perform well at all compared to ours. So there's another story goes with that one. The Stowe is the biggest. I'd been to their place in Germany and to the testing agency in France. And the word got to Stowe, to the hierarchy, that in our lab, we had our Stuckermax product and then Stowe, Drive-It, Synergy, Pyrex, Omega, a whole bunch of all the competitors in America. And there's a very simple test in America. It's an ASTM, American Standard Testing Method. And it's a Maytag dishwasher. And it's a weatherability test. So you put your little sample 4x4 in the dishwasher. You turn the dishwasher on, no soap. You've got cold water now blasted at it. That's wind-driven rain. Then it drains off and the heating element comes on and makes steam. That's 100% humidity, a steamy environment. And then when the steam's gone, you've got dry heat. So you've got 3 cycles happening, one after the other. And you can just leave it in there and let it keep repeating. So in 1 cycle, they have a bit of damage. In 2 cycles, they have a lot of damage. In 5 cycles, they're basically gone. We went to 100 cycles. So this guy from Stowe looks at this and I tell him, and, when he first came in, I thought, okay, this is a lawsuit. He's going to try and get me. When he saw that it's not just you, it's everyone in the industry. And this is an ASTM test. I'm replicating an American formal test
Yeah.
to the T. And he just turned around and he left. He didn't say goodbye or anything. So
Not too happy, I presume.
we then did a freeze-thaw test. So a freeze-thaw is you soak it underwater. I think it's 8 hours underwater or 12 hours underwater. You then freeze it for 12 hours. You take it out, visually inspect it, weigh it, make sure nothing came off it, and do it again. So US code is 10. We stopped at 40 because nothing was happening. This is after it had gone through the dishwasher. We have no competition when it comes to our finishes, interior or exterior. The biggest issue we have on the interior, the one that passed the fire test easily, is you can't knock a nail in it to hang a picture. It's 9,000 PSI. So you have to use a drywall, self-drilling, self-tapping drywall screw that's designed to go into a steel stud. You can buy them at Home Depot. No big deal.
Yeah.
You can now hang 70 to 75 pounds on that screw. So artwork and pictures, no issues. Things like kitchen cabinets and plasma TVs, find the stud. They're every 24 inches, just like you normally do.
Just like normal.
And it's not that big a deal. So where we are at now, we are inundated at the moment with fire replacements for Altadena, the big fire in LA, and the Palisades. We've got some lining up. Altadena, for some reason, has moved quicker. We're being contacted daily for affordable housing in different states, whether it's apartment buildings, because we're abuse resistant. At the end of the day, you cannot damage that apartment.
Right.
You
Yeah.
kick the wall, you're going to break your toe. Punch it, you're going to break your hand. We can come in with a power washer after a bad tenant has left.
That's what I saw. It just sprayed the inside.
Yeah. And then repaint.
That's amazing.
So that's kind of got across to the industry that, we can build very rapidly. Ryan Farhood, who's my number 2, he comes from a construction industry, high-end builder in La Jolla. After we met him a couple of years ago, he turned around and came back and he said, I need to be involved in this. And I said, look, I'm getting older. I'm looking for an ultimate replacement anyway. And he's been doing a lot of marketing. A lot of the new stuff coming in is actually through Ryan. He visits the job sites, and one of the projects we had for the Navajo in Arizona, they wanted to build a 1,200 square foot, a 2-bed, 1-bath house as a test case. So Ryan went down there for 3 days, and it was midsummer. It was super hot, and they could only work for so many hours. He could only work for so many hours. The Navajo kept on going.
Yeah, I bet.
They're used to the heat. And they built this house in 19 hours. All the walls were up. The roof was on, ready for the finishes. So you've now got an earthquake, hurricane, fire, and all the, in literally hours. It would probably take 2 to 3 weeks to finish it altogether, but it's normally months, not weeks.
Right, right.
So we're doing another big high-end home, about 9,000 square feet. The local builders are saying 18 months to 2 years to build it. We think we can do it in 3 or 4 months. And his energy bill, which was going to be $1,350 a month, is $360 a month.
Wow.
So he's so impressed. He's now bought another lot to do another one. These are $500,000 or $600,000 package from us. He's going to sell it for probably $7 or $8 million.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's amazing.
We get a lot of builders, especially from California, that come in for the little ADUs or the affordable houses. Then they see how much they can make on a big home that's going to go in Beverly Hills or Malibu, and they abandon, which is not what I intended to do. They abandon the little guy that needs the house, only to make more profit on one big house.
Well, anyway, somebody can expand their margin and their profit, right? And they're going to apply it however they can.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a common theme is just you just saying challenge accepted. Anytime somebody throws something at you, you're like, yep, I can do that. I'll figure it out.
I can't tell you what it is.
Okay. Well, I'll be on the lookout for sure. When you were younger, growing up, was that just something inherent in you? Just wanting to do the impossible or wanting to prove people wrong? Where's that come from?
Probably started when I was 7. We used to have white winters. I lived in the rural part of Nottinghamshire. Sherwood Forest was what was left of it, was literally across the street. And we used to toboggan. We called them sledges, but And then I remember seeing one person with a pair of skis. I've seen it on TV, but I've never seen real skis. And I remember my mom and dad saying, "What do you want for Christmas?" I was 7. I said, "A pair of skis." So what I got was a toolbox with all the tools that I needed from my father to make a pair of skis. Not the instructions, just the toolbox. And I remember opening it and thinking, "Oh, wow, great, tools. Where's my skis?" And my dad said, "They're in that box. You got to make them yourself." So I'd spent days in the garage, and I came out with a pair of skis. So they were dangerous. They're strapped to my feet. No quick release. So I was always mechanically minded to a point where when I was 16, you can drive at 17. So when I was 16, I was in the diving club, and one of the other guys in the club said to me, "I'm going to this military auction. You want to come with me at the weekend?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to do that." I'd always wanted an American Willis Jeep. All right, so the auction didn't have American Willis Jeeps, but it had a 1949 Land Rover in a crate, never assembled. So it was 50 pounds. My friend put the paddle up, and he got it. I said, "Tony, I don't have 50 pounds. He said, "Well, come and work for me. I have a cement company, and you can pay it off," which I did. So this crate arrives, and my dad said to me, "It's come with instructions. You've made enough plastic airplanes and plastic battleships, and because you made mistakes, don't skip a page." And what he was talking about was, I had this Lancaster bomber that I'd made, and I couldn't wait to glue the two halves of the wing together. Now I can't get the engine in the wing. So he was right. So I followed the instructions, and it took me a year. And I built a 1949 Land Rover, and I got hooked on working on cars, which kind of led to the turbocharger later.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I've always done all my own work on my car. I built engines. I haven't built transmissions. They're really tricky. I converted an XJS Jag from fuel injection to bored and stroked up to 700 horsepower. And I got California's highest speeding ticket at the time, nearly lost it.
That's so awesome.
I did 198 and I got a ticket. And
wow.
It was on an empty road, nobody around, and I had front and rear radar, and there was a highway patrol guy in a motorcycle hiding behind a sign, and he got me. And he pulled me over and he said, "All right, pop the hood." I thought, okay, now I'm really in trouble because I've taken all the emission stuff off, and it's got 6 twin choke Webers, look like a Ferrari. And he said to me, did you have a turbocharging company in Torrance? I said, yeah, just for a short time. He said, I have an E-Type and I asked for a brochure. I said, okay, did you live in North Hollywood? He said, yeah. And I said, I remember you calling. You're the only guy with an E-Type that asked, could I do this to an E-Type? And I said, yes, but you never bought it. I said, are you going to let me off? He said, well, unfortunately, I called it in. I said, what did you call in? He said, 198 miles an hour. He said, you know this is a criminal offense? And I said, no, I didn't. Am I going to go to jail? He said, well, that's up to me. No, you're not going to go to jail. I'm going to let you go. But this is a mandatory court appearance. If you don't show up, you're going to jail. So I go to this hokey little courthouse in Ventura County somewhere. And the judge looks at the ticket. Andrew Dennis approached the bench, walk up. He said, what were you driving? So I show him a photograph of the car. I didn't show him the engine because he would have got me on something else.
Yeah, right.
And he said, give me a good reason why I shouldn't suspend your license. I said, I'm a single dad, 2 kids. I got 8 employees. I drive from San Diego to Santa Barbara. My clients are all of Southern California. I'll have to lay everybody off. And how do I take my kids to school? One's in diapers. And he said, okay, what do you do? I said, I'm an architect. He said, what does an architect carry in his car to prove he's going to or from a client, to or from work, or if you got kids in the car, that's obvious. I said, a roll of drawings. He said, okay. Keep a roll of drawings in your car for the next 18 months. You've got a restricted driver's license. 1 ticket, and I'm taking your license away from you. He said, what were you thinking? I said, I was trying to do 200. And he looked over my shoulder, and I didn't know the officer was behind me. And he said, is that right, officer? And the guy said, he did actually say that he was trying to do 200. He said, well, at least you're honest. But
Yeah.
you're not a very responsible father. You know, you could have died if the car crashed. I said, well, the car's designed to do what it did. Anyway, I got away with it. So I had a restricted driver's license for 1.5 years.
Yeah. Small price to pay.
Yeah.
I think that inquisitive mindset, I think a lot of people get themselves in trouble just because they're trying to figure things out. They're trying to prove things or disprove things. And I think it just comes with the territory and the mindset.
Yeah.
Seems to me. But I'm always interested because a lot of those things, they start, whether people are conscious of knowing it, they almost always start in childhood. It's where that, if your father wouldn't give you that tool, tool chest or the belt, or who knows what you would have, a different path your entire life could have went down.
Right, exactly. I totally believe that. Yeah. I've always been a risk taker. Working as a salvage diver can be really difficult. I've always been a speed freak. I'm on my 2nd Hayabusa. That had a reputation of being the world's fastest motorcycle.
Yeah.
Must admit, I'm slowing down a bit now.
How old are your kids now? You have grandkids?
I have 2 grandkids. My daughter Emily, she's in Atlanta. Both the grandkids are now in their early teens. My son's 45. He's here in Vegas. He used to work for me. Now he's doing his own thing. We're all artists. It's in the DNA. It goes back multiple generations.
It's amazing. So what's your day-to-day look like now? Are you still on test number 1259?
No, I'm done with the 2 coatings. They're doing very well. When you change it, you really got to go back through code approvals all over again. So what we got code approved, that's where we stopped. So I'm working on some other variations of improvements to the system. Generally, I'm pricing stuff every day. So I've become sort of the estimator.
Gotcha.
Because I understand it, I can see the drawings and do a conversion from someone else's architectural drawings that have decided they don't want to build out of wood. 90% of what comes through the door is that. So it's people that are saying, okay, I've changed my mind. I don't want wood. I want your system. Right now, as I mentioned, we're getting a lot of the fire rebuild clients. They're driving out from LA. Some of them have, a couple of times have been in tears.
I bet.
They've lost everything. And one of them said to me, the worst part was our daughter is away in university and she came back and I took her out to our old lot and I'm standing there on the sidewalk looking at devastation. And she said, my daughter just collapsed. She burst into tears and that triggered the mom crying. And she said, that hurt me more than anything because all of her childhood memories are at that house. She was born there. Yep. And I can't imagine that. I don't tend to hang on to things, but to lose absolutely everything. Another client spent $70,000 on his car. It's a collector's old Mustang, completely lost it. Things like that you can't replace. It was a collector's item, it was one. So anyway, my heart goes out to these people and we're bending over backwards to help and get in quickly.
Amazing. So what does the next 1, 3, 5 years look like? What do you see on the horizon?
If you
or
ask my
hopeful for?
wife, their retirement years, I think realistically they're semi-retirement years. I do want to be able to travel with her. We want to do things. Both of us have not had a vacation for 12 years, not a week off even. So, I'm not burned out. I still like what I do every day. I get up super early in the morning, don't sleep that much. When I wake up, I get up. I'll continue even after retiring to still develop, for sure. So
Yeah.
I'll be adding on to what we've already got. I think the more that I travel, the more ideas I'll get because I'll see other things. So I'm kind of looking forward to both. I enjoy the creative part. I enjoy that the most.
Yeah. And hopefully now with the established business and a lot of the obstacles you've overcome, there's less stress involved, I would assume, less milestones you need to achieve, or
I
different milestones, maybe
handle
is a
that
better way.
well. My wife doesn't. I've brought in people around me that are capable of handling it. And I think finding good people that believe in what we're doing, they'll sacrifice to make sure everything gets done right. I think they'll do very well with the company and the company will do very well with them. So I see a lot of growth now very quickly, especially with President Trump coming in. We had people in the past that said they were going to do something and didn't do it. I won't name names, but we were in California.
What are the main obstacles now? Is it capacity? Is it setting
It
up
will be.
systems for growth?
Yeah, it'll be growth, capital, and capacity. And don't take on too much too quickly.
Sustained growth, right? Right, with
Yeah,
strategy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What are some things? I mean, your journey and your career path is amazing to hear their story. What are some things that you would like if there was a 20-year-old self or somebody that's kind of wanting to follow in your footsteps, or different avenue, a different way? What are some words of advice or encouragement that you would have for anybody on their own journey now?
Follow your dream. Make sure it's the right dream, though, and don't quit. No matter what gets put up in front of you, they're insurmountable. You can't get around them.
Love it. Love it.
And try and bump into Elon Musk or someone that, he was a risk taker. He was looking for money when I first started doing this because we had a venture capital group approached us and they were looking at Elon Musk at the same time. I remember them talking about his name. It was a name I didn't forget. He got funded. We didn't. So that was his earlier beginnings. So unfortunately, we never met an Elon Musk. I'd love to meet him. I've been called the Musk or the Jobs of the building industry.
What's your greatest accomplishment to date?
Saving lives. We've gone through multiple hurricanes that are killers and nobody got hurt.
Yep.
Looking back, when I eventually take my last breath, I've had a pretty good life. I've done things that people would never have even dared to try. And I've had at least 3 or 4 lives within this life.
That's great. That's great. Living life to the fullest.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Is there anything anything we didn't cover, or anything you want to make sure that a message or something you want to get across, whether it's about the product or future or your story, career, motivation?
Are a changer in America on how to build. We're getting other countries now that also build with wood. Here in America, we've built with wood since the Pilgrims arrived because there wasn't a brick factory when the ship landed. So we still cut trees down. We do the same thing we've always done. We run electrical wiring through a wall this way when it should be coming down from the ceiling. We have vertical electrical conduits every few inches in the wall. That means you can put an outlet anywhere you want in minutes. So it's time that America changed from what we've been doing for centuries, at least 200 years. America, for some reason, I think in a way it's not the people, it's the industry that's got them captive, the lumber industry and the drywall industry. And I want people to know there are alternatives that are way better, that reduce your costs, build it quicker, and you end up with a far superior home that's going to last a long time.
Yeah, just by questioning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most of the people find us not because they understand or know the name. We don't even make GigaCrete, the original ash panel, but all the code approvals are under that name. So right now, people are looking at what's fire resistive, what's earthquake resistant, what's hurricane resistant, and that's when they find us. We probably build more average homes that aren't in those climates. And, we're known as an extreme performance building system. So you end up with an extreme performance house. I think getting the word out on that any way possible. We've never really advertised. It's been a mistake. I didn't know how to do it. I'm not very good at marketing. Getting the word out
so people know that there's an alternative, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you're doing it right now. Thank you very much for helping.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. It's an amazing story, and I know our visitors are going to get a lot of encouragement and motivation from what you had to share, and the story, and, your obstacles, the ups and downs of your career paths, and the way you had to navigate it, through different countries, right, and some courthouses along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
One
I
at
think
least.
it's I think it's amazing, and I appreciate you coming on.